Today we're going to talk about one of my heroes, Charles Darwin. He was a scientist who studied nature and biology, and he made one of the most important discoveries of all time, evolution. Darwin was born in a small town in the countryside in England. From an early age, he was interested in the natural world, animals and plants. At university, he first studied medicine, but he didn't really like it and spent most of his time learning about nature instead. His father then sent him to study religion, to become a priest in the church. But again, this wasn't what he enjoyed, and he spent most of his spare time studying biology and geology. When he left university, he joined an expedition to explore the coast of South America. The aim of this journey was to learn about and make maps of this area of the world. Darwin was the boat's naturalist, the person who would study the animals, plants, and geology that they found. The expedition was originally meant to last 2 years, but in fact it lasted almost 5 years. During the journey, Darwin read a lot of books and made many notes about everything he saw and thought about. As they travelled around the coast of South America, they discovered all sorts of amazing things, from volcanoes to tropical rainforests. But the things Darwin was interested in most of all were the animals and plants. While he was studying them, he found very large bones, much larger than any animal living there today. Darwin realized that these animals must have died out long ago, that they must have become extinct. These large bones must have been the fossils of animals that had lived a long time ago. He also started to think about the differences between animals living today. Before Darwin, everyone thought God had created all the animals and plants as we see them today. But Darwin thought animals could change over time. In a group of islands called the Galapagos Islands, he saw that the same kind of animals lived on all the islands, but on each island, the animals had some small differences. For example, he saw that the birds on the islands were basically the same, but they had small differences based on what food they ate. The mouth of a bird is called a beak. Darwin saw that the beaks of birds that ate insects were small, but the beaks of birds that ate hard things like nuts were much larger. He thought that perhaps a long time ago, one kind of bird had arrived on these islands, and then over time, the birds had changed or evolved into many different varieties. He thought that the birds had changed to adapt to the food on the islands. The birds had changed to adapt to their environment. When he got back to England after the journey, he spent a long time thinking about these ideas. He wanted to do a lot of research first, before telling everyone what he thought, to make sure he was right. He spent many years researching, thinking, and finding more evidence. In 1858, however, he got a letter from another scientist. This other scientist had just had the same idea, the idea that animals evolve over time. This made Darwin finally decide to publish his idea. In 1859, he released his famous book on the origin of species. Although Darwin's ideas were correct, his book caused outrage, especially among religious people. Darwin's book had challenged the idea that God had created everything as we see it today. He had also argued that humans were no different to other animals. Humans had evolved too. In fact, before there was a lot of evidence, before we knew anything about DNA, Darwin thought that humans probably evolved from apes in Africa. We now know that he was correct about this too. By the time Darwin died, more and more people had started to accept his ideas, to celebrate his life, and to recognise the importance of his discoveries. He was buried in Westminster Abbey. Even today, Darwin is celebrated in the UK. For example, You can see his face on a £10 note. If you go to the Natural History Museum in London, you can see a large statue of Darwin in the main room. Darwin was one of the most important people in all of human history. He discovered evolution, showed us our relationship with the natural world, and by doing so, showed us why we exist.